One more little clap.
Hey everyone.
Hey everyone.
Hey everyone, Kyle from Andrew Hilton here, and we got through the hell of doing a pumpkin week already, which means we're in the clear for the rest of October. We never have to taste pumpkin beer again. But there are some other really good and delicious and not good and completely disgusting, delicious, good and but not completely disgusting beer styles out there that I think we should start talking about as we get into colder weather. First and foremost, right up front, we got to talk about stout. Here we have 4 stouts from all across Canada, 2 from the east represented by Good Robot out of Halifax, as well as the good folks at Two Crows, who we know and love very, very much. We have their classic Maritime Dry Stout, as well as Oatcake Computer.
I may be paranoid, but not an android.
Which is an oated stout or oatmeal stout. Really quite like this one, think it's really fun. Representing the Alberta contingent, 2 breweries we've never featured before. From Omen, we have Spilt Milk.
But how much faster is Bounty than other towns?
Out of Edmonton. So this is an old school milk stout or cream stout. And then another new one, Sparrowhawk Brewing. These folks are out of Calgary. We have their oat and vanilla stout. 4 breweries that we either haven't done before at all or don't do all that often. 4 beers we've never featured before. I'm excited. It's going to be a good stout week. We'll see you then. Wednesday, October the 19th at 6 o'clock right here.
Stout.
Hey everyone, welcome to our Wednesday night beer tasting. We have 3.5 stouts in front of us. We'll get to why it's 3.5 just a little bit later on. But stout, it's the quintessential fall winter beer. Now, usually this time of year we're starting to think about darker beers. We're starting to get out of sours and into stouts, porters, Oktoberfest styles, amber ales for like the 3 breweries that still make those. As we discovered last week, the big German styles like Weizenbock and Hefeweizen and Dunkel. We really like these styles of beer. But stout's the classic. Stout is the winter beer, the beer you are going to have in winter. And because of the overwhelming popularity, not to say market domination of Guinness, for almost everyone watching tonight, Guinness Stout was the very first dark beer you probably ever had. It certainly was for me. Aaron, your first dark beer, was it a Guinness?
Totally.
Yeah. Sky, well, Sky's just a little baby. He probably drinks like Captain Morgan and Monster. But
oh my gosh.
Yeah, there we go. Fine, let's ask someone whose opinion counts. Ryan, was your dark beer a Guinness?
I think so.
Yeah. Stout is kind of the predominant style. I've got Sky genuinely upset right now. If you see like devil horns and fire behind me, that's Sky doing the visual effects. But stout is the predominant dark beer style. It's what everybody starts with. It's kind of in the form of like Russian Imperial stouts, especially the barrel-aged Russian Imperial stouts by 3 Floyds with their barrel-aged Dark Lord, Cigar City with their Hunapoo series, even Goose Island, which I know Goose Island up here, it's kind of a shitty IPA made very much to the lowest bidder by Labatt's. It's not very good, but they do have the Bourbon County Stout, which was one of the very, very first hype beers that existed in the early 2000s. So stout has a place, but there's lots of different types of stout. We're going to taste oatmeal stouts. We're going to taste some dry stouts, which is a very unique style. We're going to taste a cream stout, and we're going to have the Good Robot. We'll get there. So let's open with Sparrowhawk Brewing. Our tasting order, by the way, tonight is going to be Sparrowhawk, Two Crows, Omen, and then, finishing with Good Robot. So let's start with Sparrowhawk here. Now, I always complain about brewery websites, but for anyone playing along with home, look up Sparrowhawk Brewing or Sparrowhawk Brewing Alberta and click the news tab on Google and see if you can find a single news article, because brewery websites they're all kind of the same. These guys kind of take a fun offbeat note, like we're not going to tell you about our spiritual journey brewing the beer. We're just here to make good beer, blah, 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 blah. It's 2 brothers, whatever. But there's no third-party sources. And when I say that, like, I don't mean there's no good third-party sources. I don't mean there's no reliable third-party sources. I mean, if you look for a news article about Sparrowhawk Brewing, even like a fluff piece of this put up by like the Calgary Chamber of Commerce that says, hey, we have a new brewery downtown. There's nothing. It's crickets. It's a ghost brewery, which is very appropriate for Halloween. They basically are a brewery that will have its first anniversary of its incorporation. This is how deep I had to dive. I had to look up their date of incorporation as a company, which has its 1-year anniversary in 6 hours. But that's how deep I had to dig. There's nothing on these guys. I do my research on these tastings. There's just nothing on Sparrowhawk. So here we are. Sparrowhawk Brewing. No, we've never had anything from them before, and considering I have to talk about each of these beers for a few minutes, we probably won't have one again because there is nothing to talk about. Their whole website is, hey, we don't like floofy descriptions of our beers. We don't like telling you the philosophy behind them. Here's our beer. Drink it or don't. Have a nice day. You want an article about us on a third-party news source? Go fuck yourself. That's Sparrowhawk Brewing. That's what they do. And it makes it really hard to talk about, so let's talk about what's actually in the glass. On the nose, vanilla. I was going to say coffee, but it's kind of like instant coffee, isn't it? It's not like fresh brewed coffee right out of the press or right out of the gas station coffee dispenser, which is generally how I get my coffee because I'm a horrible, horrible person when it comes to coffee. And yeah, it kind of smells like vanilla instant coffee more than it smells like anything else, just cold. How did I find them? A customer asked about them, and we were also wanting to do a stout week with breweries that we'd never carried their stouts before. So the customer request led to Mike thinking about them. So when I asked Mike to do me up a list of like new stouts he would want to carry, Sparrowhawk was on his list. I looked at the list and was like, okay, you know, vanilla and oatmeal, this sounds really good. This sounds fun. So I brought it in basically based on just that. We needed dark beers for cold weather. We'd had a request. Away we go. Interestingly, for their vanilla oatmeal stout, if you look at the contains, which is different from ingredients, barley, oats. Doesn't say it contains, you know, alcohol, yeast, water, vanilla, which is kind of a big deal in a vanilla oatmeal stout. I'm not trying to be dismissive of this. I'm just mildly irritated because I have to talk about beer on a camera for the better part of an hour, and there's nothing on these people. So, what's in the glass? And yes, I was actually going to circle back around that. Deirdre, I also like that this isn't super artificial, and the beer that I keep coming back to with this is the gorilla in the room here. It's the Dieu du Ciel Aphrodisiac, their chocolate vanilla stout from Quebec, which does have a massive chocolate and massive vanilla note. It's a very good beer, but it's firmly in the dessert category. This kind of reminds me more than anything else of like Mill Street's vanilla porter, in the sense that the vanilla is relatively subdued. The beer, anybody want to get a beer color shot here? Thank you. It's not particularly dark. Like as a stout, that's quite pale. That I would put usually more in the porter category, or even into like a fairly dark brown ale. Aaron, you are never going to get that light. That is your 4th, 5th try. Let's count how many times Aaron's light falls over. It's 4. That was 2 since we went live. It fell over during the promo too, and don't you think I forgot it. Okay. Yeah, this is a little bit light. It's a little bit delicate. The oatmeal should add a little bit more body. This is okay. I don't dislike this on its face. It's 5%, I assume? Yes, it's 5%. But really, this is a lot like the Mill Street Vanilla Porter. There's not a whole lot else here. The carbonation is nice for what it's worth. It's reasonably gentle. It's not too filling. It's not too sharp. It goes down very nice and clean. But when we're scrambling to find anything to talk about with the beer to the point where we're talking about the carbonation, I think that tells us all what we already kind of knew. So, Sparrowhawk. It's a beer. Moving on. Dwayne, you got my props? No? Oh, wow, okay. Fair enough. Well, we were going to do a hilarious bit later, but Dwayne apparently can't find matches anywhere.
Yes. This
Well, and that's not Dwayne's fault.
burn the store down live on camera.
Okay, Two Crows. Now, I have held all these beers in advance, so I do broadly know what we're going into. And I want to say I think this is going to be my front runner for my best beer of the night. Spoiler warning. This is a dry stout, which when we're traditionally talking about the stout family, dry stout is an Irish style, and it was traditionally made by adding a little bit of soured beer back into the base sweet beer, purely to add additional acidity, to counter out the sweetness that comes from only partial fermentation on stouts. Like there's still always going to be, because you're using caramel malt, using darkly roasted malt, there are going to be some sugars that are caramelized and will remain even after fermentation, giving the beer some sweetness. With dry stout, they don't over attenuate the beer. They don't give it all the yeast until the beer is completely dried out and has no balance. They trick your palate a little bit by using some sour beer blended back. Now, this beer doesn't mention anything like that, but if you're calling it a dry stout, I kind of feel like you have to do that. So unless you're Guinness, at which point they just use like a artificial acidification yeast thing. But I trust Two Crows. If they're going to call it a dry stout, they're going to add some souring. Old school stout, this is kind of a better version, or at least a attempt at a better version of Guinness. It's from Two Crows. I've never really had a bad Two Crows beer. I'm optimistic on this one. Let's give it a shot. Now this one is, I think, lighter on the nose because it doesn't have that big vanilla hit. But why are we having it after the Sparrowhawk? It's because once this is on your tongue, the Sparrowhawk kind of disappears, doesn't it? This is still going. It's still showing me roast. This is still showing me coffee. This is still showing me kind of fading, dying hop greenness and spice. It's showing me roast at the very back. It's very pretty. This is a very well balanced, well executed, just overall very well done stout. This, does it do anything special? Is it aged in a bourbon barrel or made with wine yeast, or it has agave and cocoa berries and weasel poop coffee in it? No, it's none of those things. That's why it's not super expensive. It's just a right down the middle, classic, well executed stout from a good brewery. And sometimes I wonder if those styles still have a place, but then I look at like the Hoyne Appleton ESB that sold faster than we could actually buy it. And again, grant, we would if you'd bring it in again. This is a really classic interpretation of a very classic style. I like this type of beer. I like this type of stout. This is the kind of stout that I want to buy and drink myself. Yeah, it's got a nice roasted barley note. It's pretty. It's not over the top showy, but there's still something new for me to find, whether it be burnt bread or a little bit of like a grassy, spicy hop note that's very elusive. I find it just as I'm dipping my nose into the glass. I kind of get it on the way down, and once my nose is fully in the glass, it's gone. I seem to get it just there, just before my nose hits its, because I usually like the glass just touching the skin under my nose. I don't want it pressed against it, but I want to feel the rim of the glass just there. Just before that moment is where I get this very light suggestion of spicy hops like Goldings or Fuggles or something like that. And it's just there. And it's really neat because they're not hops in the way that we understand with the IPA. They're not bursting with grapefruit and citrus and pine and everything else. These are cheesy, cedary, piney. They're delicate and soft, and I can really describe them more as like spicy, or like almost the smell of your spice cabinet when you very first open it, and the act of opening the cabinet pulls kind of the scent of everything in the cupboard out towards your face. It kind of gives me that sort of impression, separate from the roasty, coffee-ish, chocolatey, almost like burnt bready notes of the stout itself. So it does have some of that. It's very subtle, but it is there. I will say I don't think this is a holdover from this, but I also do get a distinct cinnamon note on this that's very interesting. I don't think that's leftover vanilla from the Sparrowhawk, but I also didn't rinse my glass in between. So I can't say for 100%, but I think this does have a cinnamon note. I'd be curious if anyone else is picking that up. Oh yeah, cheeseburger with bacon, fish and chips, pot pie. Oh, that's a question. If anybody's watching, has I was down on the south end. I don't make it down to kind of the south side Safeway, Best Buy, Costco area very often, but I actually needed something from, I can't remember, something down there, Lowe's, I think. And I saw there's a South Street Burger Company down there, in the same building as like a Thai place down by the closed down Sobeys there. Has anyone been there? I'm very curious about it because I do like me a good burger. And I know it's like a Calgary chain and they're just down in Lethbridge and it's probably a franchise and maybe it's not very good, but I mean, it's a Calgary chain. It's kind of local. I would not be heartbroken if we got like a Little Empire down here or Boogie's Burgers down here. Does anybody know anything about that South Street Burger? Because I am curious, and it's not a part of the city I get to very often. I don't think it's super unique. I think it's just unique in the sense that dry stout is Guinness's style. This is what they've planted their flag on. They've claimed it. This is what we do. And as a result, a lot of breweries are scared of it. There have been some good ones through the market before. Wild Rose, back when Wild Rose wasn't owned by Sleeman's, made a very interesting dry stout. And I think they still make it. It's just not what it used to be, called Alberta Crude. Big Rock used to make a dry Irish stout called McNally's Reserve, which was completely separate from like the McNally's Irish Red, which they also don't make anymore. There's been some good dry stouts through the market, but Guinness is just such a giant in the category that not a lot of breweries bother with it, especially since North Americans generally prefer sweeter stouts like the Spilt milk here, which we'll get to in a minute. This is a style that has it's like, hey, what am I going to make? I'm going to make a horribly over oaked, super boozy, terrible Californian red, and then realizing that you have to undercut Apothic Red in cost and combat their marketing. Or saying, hey, I'm going to make a really fucking pedestrian New Zealand Sauv Blanc with no soul or good ideas, and realizing that Kim Crawford's right there. It's very difficult when you've got just a monolith brand in the category, and I think that's why we don't see a lot of dry stouts. So it's unique, but it shouldn't be. Oh, Tyler says it's a decent burger, and it's no boogies, but nothing is. Fully agree. That was really nice and really classic. And I can absolutely see a time where that would be my favorite thing on the table. It might be my favorite thing tonight, but for very different reasons. Let's try Omen Brewing. Now, these folks do have a website, and in a cool little family twist, this is three brothers and their dad, based in Edmonton, got their start in 2020. They make some pretty cool beers. This is the one that I was most interested in. Now, of course, this is a cream stout or lactose stout. It's a stout with lactose added. It basically does what it says on the box. So it's definitely got some sweetness. So while this is perhaps drier than a typical stout, this is sweeter. It's sweeter, it's dairy influenced, it's richer. It's going to make Craig very sick in the morning. But this is an interesting style of stout because this was completely unheard of here. Like, I can remember going to Michigan or driving to Minnesota or driving to North Dakota to buy Bell's Special Double Cream Stout because you couldn't get a good lactose-infused stout here, and really loving it. It was the first thing that when I started traveling for beer and wanting to branch out back when I was younger and apparently was willing to blow massive amounts of money on beer and travel, it was one of those beers that I really latched on to early. I loved the special double cream stout. It was just now, I've had it in the last year. It was a very down the middle classic sweet stout. That's what it was. But at the time, I thought it was unbelievable, and it really steered me in a certain direction when it came to stouts. And this one, made in Edmonton, is very much of the same style. In the nose, it is, I would say, less complex, but bigger. It smells richer. It smells more powerful. There's a lot more going on. Sorry, there's less going on, but there's more of it. This is not Mozart. This is Nickelback, but played louder. And Craig, yes, you do need to go to Boogie's. And do make the special trek to go to the one up on Edmonton Trail in the north, the original one. Don't go to the one in Marteloup. It's good. It's not the same. You don't get the ambiance of the original one with... Yeah, I like the original. The Marteloup one's fine, but I like the original. Yeah, it's big, it's smooth, it's rich, it's fat. But we're not going to lose ourselves on the nose on this one, talking about the delicate hop notes on this. It's just bigger. Alcohol, I assume, is bigger. Actually, it's lighter, 4.5. And it won a Judges Selection Silver in 2021 at a completely meaningless show. Good for it. Sorry, if you're a regular watcher, you know I don't think awards mean anything other than they paid their printer to put an award on the can, and it really doesn't matter what the award is. But I will say, if I was in the market for a big, sweet, rich, dense stout, something I would enjoy drinking, something that I might even want to cook with in the right dish, like if I wouldn't put this in an Irish stew, for example. I wouldn't want this much sweetness in that. But if I was making like one of those chocolate cake recipes that uses like a can of dark beer, oh yeah, this for days. This would be fantastic with that. But no, this is not a beer for everyone. It's just a nice, big, sweet, rich, dense stout. Either the sweetness is really going to work for you, or it's really going to not. I am loving that Edmonton is getting more and more breweries. These guys are actually on the, I think they're calling it like the Happy Beer Street in Edmonton. Both of the Blind Enthusiasm breweries, Bent Stick, these guys. I think there's 7 or 8 breweries on that street now in Edmonton, and they're trying to turn it into kind of a barley belt north, which I think is a really great idea for them. Craig likes it. It's not going to like him, but Craig likes it. And yeah, in terms of pure hedonism, I think I like this more than the Two Crows. But I still think I'd buy the Two Crows ahead of this. Just because I think by the time I got to the second can of this, I'd probably be becoming bored. And that's not... Maybe that sounds really harsh. I was going to say it's not a criticism. No, it's absolutely a criticism. It's pleasant, it's sweet, it's chunky. But what's it doing on your finish right now? Sky, could I impose on you for just a minute?
Yes.
Would you dump that for me? Just
Sure.
I want to prove a little tiny point here. Sorry, I'm plugged into the sound system, so I can't do it myself. I'm not just lording over poor Sky. No, just dump it. It's fine. Thank you. So I'm gonna go back to the Two Crows. I'm gonna pour myself a very tiny amount. Now that it's in my mouth, I'm just going to stand here. Super engaging content you all paid for. But what I'm noticing is that the beer's evolving. The hop notes are there, and then they fade, and then they come back. The roast is there. The chocolate's there. It slowly fades to like a roasty charcoal sort of thing. This beer changes and evolves and becomes more complex on the finish. If I go back to the Omen here, pour myself a tiny bit. This is immediately very pleasant. It's bright. It's full. It's very, very, very good for 4.5%. But here I am 5 seconds after I swallowed. I could have had a glass of milk. I could have a glass of water. I could have had a cup of cold coffee. There's not much left, is there? This is a very simple beer. It's very pleasant. It's very rich. It's very dense. It's very fun. But that has a lot more going on. And it really shows when you try to go back and you just weigh the finishes against each other. Good in an advent calendar, hint, hint. Well, we've, you can't see it, but Aaron actually had to go over and like talk to Dwayne about not cutting the little can toppers during the promo because it was making too much noise. So those are already in production. All right, before we get to that, let's talk about what we have coming up next week. Now, this comes out of a conversation between Devin and Mike of, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do our favorite Pilsners of all time, a great big best of Pilsners showcase? I said, yes, it would be, but Part-Time Model's not out right now, and I can't do this without Part-Time Model. That would be wildly unfair and inaccurate. So we're not doing the best Pilsners out there. We're going to see if we can make me eat some crow. Now, you remember a few weeks ago when we did the beer tasting, tasting, I made a comment that was something to the effect of, this Live, Laugh, Love has the stupidest name I've ever seen, but it might be the best IPA I've had this year. Cool. I had a customer in last week that was like, really? The Live, Laugh, Love. That was the best IPA you've had. Yeah, I thought it was. He's like, yeah, I didn't like it. Okay, cool. It was in a lineup with no other IPAs. It was standing alone. The beers were kind of all over the place between the even Cowgirls Get the Bloobs and the Party Parrot and this and I can't remember what the fourth one was. It also had a stupid name. But okay, fine. You know what? I'll take that challenge. You want to throw down the gauntlet? I'll take that up. Fine. We're going to give Live, Laugh, Love its due. We're going to take it up against 88's Hi-Fi Hazy IPA. This is the replacement for Ring Pop from 88. This was, when we did the beer trip, my favorite beer of the trip. We're going to do the Superflux Airstream, which, okay, Superflux doesn't make a bad IPA, but of all of them, the Airstream is my favorite. And then the brand new Hello Euphoria IPA from Establishment, which I also had on the beer trip, and I thought was really, really well done. So, all right. I made a very bold claim that someone called me on with the Live, Laugh, Love. But you know what? I really want to find out if they're right, or if I genuinely called it and said that was one of the best IPAs of the last year, if not the best IPA of the last year, which is, I think, how I actually phrased it. Okay, well, we can't put it off any longer. I'm very curious how everyone else's experience with this is going to be. The thing I sent Dwayne out to get was a book of matches, because I was going to strike a match and smell it and say that it didn't smell as much like struck match as this beer does, because to me this smells like sulfur, it smells like struck match. There is something fundamentally wrong with this, which is a shame, because I broadly very much respect Good Robot, and I think underneath all of that sulfur, there's a good beer here. Now, I'm somewhat hopeful, not very, that I have the only bad can going. You're all going to be sitting at home with a delicious chocolate oatmeal stout and saying, I don't know what Kyle's on about, this is great. Yeah, I don't think it's going to work that way, though. But hey, you know, optimism. Let's see how this shakes out. I'm not pouring a big one. Yep, nope, not doing that.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm not sipping that. It smells like death.
Can I give it a smell?
Yeah. This is what death smells like. Do you got like sulfur, struck match, something
Yeah, it smells
really
like,
sharp?
It smells off.
Yeah,
For sure.
and I don't know what it is. And I'm really disappointed because I really like Good Robot. We've done a tasting based around their stuff before. We sell their beers. This is bad. This is really bad. This is borderline undrinkably bad. Now, All the Things was just a hot mess, and we all made fun of it. But the reason that we could do that was that All the Things, it was just a weird recipe. And ended up being kind of a disaster. This is not what the brewers intended. This is not what they wanted to put in the can. This is a mistake. This is very unfortunate. It's very bad. And it's clearly not what it's intended to be. So I'm not going to talk about it too much other than to say, I'm sorry. I trusted Good Robot. I said, hey, they make good beer. I can put this on the tasting without trying it necessarily because I really trusted that Good Robot would do a good job. And they kind of didn't. This is a disaster. Well, Craig's saying he'll drink it. It's been a bit of a day. You can see the chocolate oatmeal if the oatmeal was burnt. For me, it's the sulfur note. Like, there's a real sulfur. And I deliberately opened this early and left it stand open so that it would maybe breathe off some of that sulfur.
Let the sulfur dissipate a little.
I mean, I can kind of see like a molasses Halloween Kisses thing on the nose. Like, that's cool. I think that's neat. But no, that's... I mean, it's from July and it's a stout. Like, it's 5 months old. Usually a stout will have a 12-month shelf life. It's not too old. Yeah, molasses Halloween candy. Thank you, Megan. I'm exactly where you are. Yeah, and I just think there's something wrong with this. I will say that since I opened this at kind of 20 to 6, it's softened. It's a little less stinky with the sulfur.
What's the aftertaste going?
Not great. It finishes like hot metal cans.
Like
Yeah,
mess.
it's just not good. This does nothing for me. I don't think this is a stout anyone should buy or anyone should drink, especially since they're saying it tastes like a chocolate dipped oatcake. No surprises. Well, surprise, it fucking blows. I don't get it. No, this does nothing for me. This can't be, based on all the other Good Robot beers I've had, this can't be what Good Robot intended. It just can't. So, sorry to end in 30 minutes. I do apologize for that. And more than that, I apologize for this being in the lineup. Next week, considering it's a best of tasting, not a, hey, let's try some cool stuff from breweries we don't really know that well. Mistake made. Let's just promise that next week's going to be better, and the week after that, oh, if anyone remembers Brew Brothers out of Calgary.
Wow.
Now, this is a very old Alberta craft brew reference, but if anyone remembers the old Brew Brothers and their most famous beer, well, not next week, the week after, well, we might have something special for them. Next week's going to be great. The week after is going to be real cool. But,
Is it a black lager?
shut up. Jesus Christ, Aaron. You have no sense of
I
timing.
didn't say it loud enough.
Jesus.
It's all good.
All right. Well, Sky, thank you. Everyone who joined us, thank you. Aaron, just go soak your head. This has been us for another week.
Cam.
This has been a bit of a weird one. I was really thrown off by how much I didn't like this. Deirdre has 312. Craig has 231. I think I'm very much here and then probably wouldn't buy and then would actively avoid. I'm very 1. And 1 is absolutely outstanding. This is fine. I would split a 4-pack with somebody. This is probably going to go on sale. That I'm calling the agent and saying you need to buy that back. So here we are.
There you go.
I hope you'll join us for IPA next week. I promise it won't be quite like this. And I promise that Aaron won't spoil everything.
No,
Aaron.
please.
Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a wonderful night.